Yield to gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Luetkemeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Khuzami, Mr. Bernanke and Paulson were negotiating with Merrill Lynch and Bank of America and sort of came to an agreement, yet they didn't disclose this. They didn't want to put in writing the transaction they were about to embark on here and about to approve and had been working with. And my understanding is that once they did that, that would have been a disclosable event that the SEC would have been able to come in to and be a part of and have some oversight over. What's your opinion of this transaction, how it all happened, and this unwillingness to put this in writing?
Well, Congressman, what the securities law require is that if that understanding had solidified to a material contract, then it would have been required to have been disclosed under what's known as Form A case. So Bank of America would have had to make a disclosure if it rose to the level of an enforceable contract. And, you know, that's...
yeah, but isn't this skirting the law by them saying, we're going to have a little wink and nod agreement here, and let's don't put this in writing, let's all just have a gentleman's handshake on it? I mean, aren't they trying to subvert what really is a necessary part of a transaction? Is it the disclosure to all of the parties involved?
Well, Congressman, it wouldn't be appropriate to comment on my views of that in light of the ongoing nature of the investigation, but certainly there can be circumstances where there is an enforceable contract, even though it's not formally written down, in which case it may trigger the disclosure obligations.
Okay, following along that process, and do you see something that has happened here that you think needs to be changed in existing law? Do we need to have something more clarified by the way that we have these transactions take place so that there is more disclosure?
Congressman, we sort of constantly review our disclosure rules and regulations to determine whether or not more disclosure or different disclosure is appropriate. That process is ongoing now. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act required us to consider more real-time or robust disclosure, and that's a process that continues. We would certainly take the experience here and determine whether or not we should change our rules and regulations appropriately.
Okay, well, you still haven't said, yes, there are some things we need to do, and they are. Can you fill in the blank there?
Well, the question whether or not events such as these should require more affirmative disclosure obligation is something that we're considering. So, for example, contracts or discussions short of a formal legally enforceable obligation, should that be disclosed even though all the terms aren't finalized, or interim results that may not rise to the level of a material impairment of an asset, which is the current standard, whether or not that should be disclosed. So,
are you currently looking at doing that with your rules and regulations, or do we need to have some congressional action, or what do you think we need to do?
Senator, Congressman, that's something that we look at on a regular basis, and we're looking at now.
Okay. As someone who has gone through this and been in the middle of it, and we're in the process now congressionally to try and do something with this too big to fail situation, what do you see that we're not doing with the legislation that's proposed that you think would be advantageous or would be a big aid to you, or would be something that we could do in the future to mitigate or minimize some of the things that are going on or that have gone on?
Well, Congressman, look, from an enforcement perspective, which is my perspective, right, transparency and information is critical. We cannot determine if misconduct is going on in markets if we don't have complete and accurate and standardized information about what is going on. So, for example, registration of hedge funds, which would require better reporting and stronger compliance and inspection authority, would be highly beneficial.
Okay, the transparency and the registration that's in the bill right now, does it go far enough? Does it go too far? What's your opinion?
If I might, I'm not sure I understand the full and complete details of what's in the current version of the bill, so if I could have an opportunity to respond to you, I would appreciate that. But the same is true in the derivatives markets. We would like that kind of information. One case we brought, for example, recently involved insider trading, which typically takes place in the equity world, in stocks, was actually going on in the credit default swap market. And yet, we don't have nearly the same kind of information in that market as we do in the equities.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you, Mr. Khuzami.